The moment I walked through that frosted glass door into the private dining room, I knew something was terribly wrong. The table was set too formally. The lighting felt interrogative. And there, in the center, sat a thick manila folder next to a fountain pen I'd never seen before. A man in an expensive suit sat with his laptop already open, watching me instead of looking at any menu. That's when my mother smiled and said the words that made my blood run cold. "We just need to discuss what's fair now that your father is gone." My name is Nicole Adams. I'm 27 years old. I work remotely as a data analyst, and I know enough about contracts and financial documents to recognize a setup when I'm standing in one. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what came next. That stranger was my mother's attorney. Those papers were designed to force me to redistribute most of my inheritance so everyone could share. He slid the document toward me like we were closing on a house. My mother clasped her hands together like a judge waiting for a verdict. The other people in that room stared at me like I'd already committed a crime just by existing. "All you need to do is sign," he said smoothly, "and transfer the majority of what your father left you, for the good of the family." When I refused, everything changed. The polite smiles vanished. They started dropping hints about dragging me to court, destroying my credit, making my life miserable if I didn't cooperate. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard my father's voice reminding me who actually had the law on their side. I looked around that table, counting slowly under my breath, then out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I paused. "That's a lot of people you brought." They looked confused. That's when I smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "Funny thing is," I said, "I only brought one person too. If you want to know who walked in after that and how this little family ambush became the worst mistake my mother ever made, stay until the end." I wasn't always the woman counting people like chess pieces. For most of my childhood, I was just a regular kid from suburban Seattle who thought family meant movie nights and my dad's terrible coding jokes. My father, James, was a software developer. He drove the same Subaru for 12 years and brought leftovers for lunch. My mother, Catherine, hated that. She wanted the McMansion, the luxury SUV, the Instagram-worthy vacations. When I was 16, they divorced. Washington's community property laws split everything down the middle. Mom saw it as her chance to upgrade. Dad saw it as losing half of everything while still owing alimony. After the divorce, I lived with Dad in a modest townhouse. He taught me about budgeting apps, Roth IRAs, and why credit scores mattered more than designer labels. While other parents bragged about new cars, my dad bragged about zero credit card debt. Mom reinvented herself overnight. She married Greg, a flashy real estate broker, and suddenly her Instagram flooded with wine tastings and yacht parties. She had 2 stepkids, Ryan and Olivia, and they all wore matching outfits in holiday cards. I was technically still her daughter, but I felt like an extra in her social media show. Every post, so blessed, grateful for my amazing family. I was never in those photos. She didn't call about my life. She called to brag about Ryan's sports or Olivia's academics. My name only came up when she complained to Dad about money. On weekends, Dad and I hiked trails or took cheap day trips. He'd point at expensive waterfront properties and say, "People obsess over these, but they still wake up with the same problems." Late at night, when I worried I'd caused their split, he'd sit on my bed and tell me, "You don't owe anyone your future just because you share their DNA. Build something real, something that belongs to you." I didn't know he was quietly meeting with an attorney updating documents, ensuring that if anything happened to him, I wouldn't be at the mercy of my mother's version of fair. When you grow up with a careful father, you never imagine car accident is how his story ends. But one stormy Wednesday night, a semi-truck jackknifed on I-90. There was a chain reaction. By the time the state patrol called me, my father was gone. The funeral was small, coworkers, neighbors, and me trying to breathe through the crushing weight. Mom showed up in designer black with Greg and the stepkids, crying loudly, hugging people she hadn't spoken to in years. I stood beside his urn thinking, "You didn't love this man. You loved the life he couldn't give you." After the service, a woman in a navy suit approached. Monica, my father's attorney. She explained Dad had been thorough, updated his will multiple times, concerned about pressure from Mom. According to the will, everything came to me. The townhouse, stock portfolio, retirement accounts, savings, not Fortune 500 money, but the careful wealth of a responsible man. Monica explained probate would validate the will. "Your father was very clear, Nicole. He wanted you to control your future without interference." Right on cue, my phone buzzed. "Mom, we need to talk. Your father would want you to consider the whole family." She didn't ask how I was coping. She asked when we could discuss numbers. I tried giving her the benefit of the doubt. I mentioned Dad had an attorney, said we could talk after probate. She ignored that and asked for rough estimates like pricing, inventory. When I didn't respond fast enough, the guilt trip started. She reminded me how expensive raising me had been, how Ryan and Olivia needed college money. Always the same phrase, "You have to think about the family." Her new family. Monica told me firmly, "Don't share balances, don't sign anything, don't agree to private deals." That's when Mom's tone shifted to veiled threats, voicemails about expensive lawyers, years of delays, damaged credit in a messy legal fight. She'd add something sentimental, then slide into, "You don't want this to get ugly, do you?" Weeks later, probate confirmed the will. Everything transferred to my name. Within a day, Mom emailed, "Family meeting." Full of phrases like "clear the air" and "find a fair solution." A nice restaurant, private room, so we can talk openly. I forwarded it to Monica. "Will you come with me?" She called immediately. "I'll be there. You're not walking into any meeting alone." We agreed on a plan. I'd enter first to see who was there. Monica would wait nearby and come when I texted. The restaurant was the kind of place with quiet jazz music and water glasses that never seemed to empty. A hostess led me past couples on dates to the back, where a frosted glass door marked private was already closed. My heart hammered against my ribs as she opened it. And that's when I stepped into the scene I described at the beginning, my mother at the head of the table looking like a corporate executive, Greg in an expensive blazer, Ryan and Olivia across from them, and a man in a suit with his laptop already glowing. "Nicole, you made it." Mom said brightly, like I'd arrived early to help set up for a party. "We just want to talk." The suited man stood and offered his hand. "I'm Thomas, an attorney helping the family explore options regarding your father's estate." The way he said family made it sound like we'd all lost the same thing. I sat down slowly. The top page of the document stack had my name on it, along with terms like redistribution, voluntary agreement, and irrevocable. My stomach dropped. "Before you panic," Mom said, leaning forward with a practiced sympathetic look, "we just want to make sure everyone is taken care of. Your father's will didn't account for the current reality. Things have changed." She gestured toward Ryan and Olivia as if they were line items in a budget. "College is expensive. This is just about fairness." Thomas explained smoothly that the document was a family settlement agreement, allowing me to transfer a reasonable portion of the inheritance into a shared trust. Reasonable, according to the bold numbers on the page, meant roughly 70%. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was burning. My dad had worked late nights, driven carefully through rain, saved every penny, and now I was being told that honoring his wishes was selfish. "No one's trying to take anything from you," Mom added, which was almost funny considering the contract literally existed to take things from me. "We just don't want this to become a long, ugly legal fight. That would hurt your credit, your future. This way, we handle it privately like adults." I thought about the voicemails, the guilt trips, my dad sitting on the edge of my bed telling me I didn't owe anyone my future. I took a slow breath. "So if I don't sign this, what happens?" The temperature in the room dropped. Greg shifted uncomfortably. Ryan stared at his phone. Olivia looked at the table. Thomas folded his hands. "Then this could become complicated. Your mother could contest aspects of the probate. There could be delays, legal fees, public records. It might impact your credit. Conflict is stressful. We're trying to avoid that." Mom jumped in, her voice sharpening. "We're giving you a chance to show you care about this family. You're not the only one who lost something, Nicole. Ryan needs tuition support. Olivia has medical expenses. We're asking you to do the right thing." I looked at each of them, the lawyer ready to bill by the hour, Greg who'd married into Mom's hunger for status, two stepkids who barely knew me, and my mother who could cry on command while pushing a pen toward my hand. My pulse pounded in my fingertips, but my voice came out calm. "How many of you are there again?" I asked softly. Mom frowned. "What does that have to do with anything?" I let my gaze move around the table like I was counting place settings. "1," I said, nodding at Mom. "2," at Greg. 3, 4, at Ryan and Olivia. I paused on Thomas. 5. The room went silent except for the faint hum of the restaurant outside. "That's a lot of people," I said, meeting Mom's eyes. Confusion flickered across her face, then irritation. "Nicole, this isn't a joke." I smiled. For the first time since walking in, I felt something other than fear. I felt ready. "You're right," I said. "It's not." I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and tapped the single word I'd already typed into a draft message before I arrived. Then I set the phone face down next to the untouched pen. "Funny thing is," I added, "I only brought one person too." A soft knock sounded on the door seconds later, sharp and precise. The hostess opened it just enough to let a woman in a navy suit step through, a familiar folder in her hand and a calm, professional smile on her face. "Hello, Catherine," Monica said politely. "I understand you wanted to discuss Nicole's inheritance." After that meeting, Mom walked out silent and stiff, her lawyer mumbling about revisiting options. Monica told me I'd handled it perfectly, that I had every legal right to refuse. I wanted to believe that was the end. It wasn't. Days later, Mom's messages turned cold, disappointed, ashamed. How money changed me. She hinted things could get complicated with accounts. Monica warned, if she can't move you emotionally, she might try financially. I changed all passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, froze my credit. Days later, I received a bank email, except the URL was slightly off. Someone had been paying attention. The bank confirmed they hadn't sent it. There'd been a failed login attempt on my account. I filed a police report and an FBI complaint. I also installed security cameras at my apartment. 2 weeks later, during a work call, my phone alerted someone outside my building. Greg's SUV. I opened the camera feed. Greg sat in his car, laptop glowing. Another alert, motion at the mailboxes. Mom stood there, phone to her ear, glancing around nervously. Then, unrecognized device attempting to access your account. Mom at my mailbox. Greg with a laptop. My account being accessed. I screen recorded everything and pulled the bank logs. Timestamps matched perfectly. Monica called, voice sharp. "This isn't harassment. This is attempted identity theft. They're breaking the law." I filed a formal police report. For the first time, I had proof they couldn't spin away. The courtroom in downtown Seattle felt heavier than anything I'd seen on TV. I sat next to Monica, hands wrapped around cold coffee, watching the screen where my life was about to play in high definition. The prosecutor laid it out calmly. Attempted account access, fraudulent emails, coordinated behavior captured on video and in digital logs. The footage showed my mother at my mailbox, Greg in his SUV with his laptop, the bank notification arriving at the exact same timestamp. It was like watching a crime documentary where the villains were my own family. Their lawyer tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, claiming they thought they were accessing an old joint account. Monica stood up calmly and reminded the court that the will had been fully probated. Dad's accounts had been solely in his name. Then mine, no joint access, no gray area. She presented the emails, the fake bank link, the IC3 complaint, the messages where Mom had hinted at making things complicated if I didn't cooperate. When I took the stand, I simply told the truth. The family meeting, the settlement agreement, the pressure, the threats, the phishing emails. I described watching the camera footage in real time and feeling every piece click together. When the judge spoke, his voice was steady but firm. The evidence showed clear attempts to gain unauthorized access using deceptive methods. Using personal knowledge to impersonate someone isn't a family misunderstanding, it's fraud. He found my mother and Greg guilty of attempted identity theft and fraud. He imposed a substantial fine, plus restitution for my legal costs. Probation for years. A program on financial crimes, and a restraining order barring them from contacting me for 5 years. He also referred Greg's real estate license to the state board for review. I saw the exact moment Greg understood what that meant. His shoulders sagged like someone had removed a critical piece from the board. What surprised me wasn't the legal outcome. It was the silence afterward. There were no dramatic scenes. Mom didn't chase me down begging. She just stood in the hallway staring at the floor, her carefully curated life crumbling in ways she couldn't fix with filters or captions. I walked past her without stopping, not to be cruel, but because there was nothing left to say that the judgment hadn't already said better. For the first time since Dad died, I felt like the ground beneath my feet belonged to me again. In the weeks after the verdict, life didn't magically transform. But the silence in my apartment felt like peace instead of loneliness. With Monica's help, I reviewed everything Dad left, not as targets, but as tools for a real future. We diversified his tech stocks, established an emergency fund, created a retirement plan that would have made him proud. I kept my remote job, working from the same townhouse we'd shared. Some mornings, I'd sit at the dining table with my laptop and coffee, looking at the empty chair where he used to sit with his own mug and printed code. It hurt, but in a clean way, like a scar that had finally healed. Therapy helped with the rest. I found a counselor who didn't flinch when I said my mom tried to steal my inheritance out loud. Slowly, the knot in my chest loosened. I realized I'd spent years trying to earn a place in a version of family that had never really included me. I started showing up in different places: a yoga studio where no one knew my last name, a community meetup for women in tech who supported each other's goals. With part of the restitution, I donated to an organization supporting identity theft victims. Some of the money Mom tried to steal ended up helping people whose lives had been devastated by the same crime. As for Mom, the consequences did exactly what they were supposed to. The fines forced her to sell the house she used to brag about online. Greg's license issues meant fewer deals, less income. Their Instagram feed slowed, shifting from champagne photos to vague quotes about learning who really has your back. The restraining order kept them out of my inbox and away from my door. People sometimes say, "But she's still your mother," like biology is some kind of moral shield. What I learned is that shared DNA doesn't give anyone the right to your future. Love is proven in how people protect you when it's inconvenient, not in how loudly they say family when money is on the table. Dad's real inheritance wasn't the townhouse or the accounts. It was teaching me to read a spreadsheet, guard my credit score, and understand that integrity matters even when no one's watching. It was the courage to walk into a room full of people who wanted everything and say, no. If you're sitting there right now with a knot in your stomach, watching someone you love try to twist your loyalty into leverage, hear this clearly: you are not selfish for protecting what's yours. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not a bad daughter or son for refusing to be scammed by someone who shares your last name. The most important thing you own is your ability to say, no, this stops here. My mom thought she could threat me into handing over my inheritance. What she didn't count on was that Dad had already given me something worth more than every dollar she chased: the knowledge that real family protects your future. They don't try to steal it.